Hi, this is Autohaus Hamilton TV. I'm James, and in this video I'll be talking brake pad warning indicators, or brake warning wires as they're also referred to. The very first cars had drum brakes, and those first drum brakes were operated by cables and rods. Later, hydraulics came along to take the message from the driver's foot to the brakes that some stopping was required. And even though it was a hydraulic system, adjustment was required to compensate for the fact that the friction material on the brake shoes wore. What happened was, as the brake shoes wore, the driver had to push further and further in order to achieve the same braking result. So the driver knew very well what was going on with the friction material. From around the mid-1950s, road cars started using disc brakes, and those disc brakes were hydraulically operated. Now, with hydraulically operated disc brakes, there's no longer any need to carry out any adjustment because the hydraulic system does that automatically for you. And with no adjustment, that meant that the driver no longer knew how worn or how unworn his brake pads were. So the first thing was an audible warning device. And the first audible warning device was a sort of a loud noise that happened when the brake pad friction material wore through and you started using backing plate against discs, and if you ignored that, it was followed by loud crumpling of metal and tinkling of glass to let you know that your brakes were a little bit worn. So that wasn't entirely satisfactory. The next step was a true audible warning device where somebody inserted essentially a pin partway through the friction material. When the friction material wore close to the end of its life, the pin made contact with the brake disc and an awful screeching noise was the result. Even if you didn't know what that screeching noise was, you'd go along to your workshop and say, "There's something horribly wrong with my car, it's making a screeching noise, please have a look at it," and your friendly mechanic would take it from there and replace your brake pads before disaster occurred. The next stage was an electrical wear indicator, and the electrical wear indicators look something like this. So what you have is the action part of the device. In this case, there are two, and that brings me to the next point. A wear indicator can monitor any number of pads. So if you think about a car's braking system, you've got a total of 4 front pads and 4 rear pads, and you can be monitoring anywhere from 1 to 4 of the pads on any axle. Typically, Porsche monitor at least 1 brake pad per wheel, but some manufacturers monitor only let's say the front left and the rear right. And it shouldn't really make any difference because the brake pads should all wear at more or less the same rate. So in this case, we're looking at a brake pad wear indicator or a brake warning wire that's used on a 996 Carrera or a 986 Boxster S. You've got a piece here that hooks into the vehicle's wiring loom, and we've got these pieces here that hook into the brake disc, and I'll show you exactly how that works. So let's show this a bit more clearly. There's a clip on the back, and that clip locates itself in a notch on the back of the brake pad, and the rest of the indicator gets pushed into the pad material. And you can see there's a hole in the brake pad friction material. And if we get a good bead on what we're doing, in that clips with a click, so that's now fastened in place. So now when this brake pad wears beyond where the hole is, it'll wear through that brake pad warning wire, and a light will come on the dash of the car to indicate that it's time to replace the brake pads. At the time when that brake warning comes on, depending on your car and how you drive, you've got roughly 1,000 kilometers in which to get the brake pads replaced. And if you don't replace the brake pads, then the car will automatically revert to the Type 1 audible warning system that I talked about earlier. As ever, goodbye, and thank you very much for watching.